Welcome to the Tulane Future of Energy Forum. Please be seated. The session will begin momentarily. A reminder that Tulane University promotes and protects the free exchange of ideas. Freedom of expression includes the ability to engage or not to engage in the exchange, examination, and discussion of ideas. It does not include the right to disrupt the freedom of others. Therefore, we prohibit the physical or virtual disruption, shouting down, blocking, or suppressing of a protest, a demonstration, program, or an invited speaker's right to speak. Please note that disruptions of this nature may result in the removal from the event.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Tulane University. It is my pleasure to introduce our next session, The Materials Behind the Mission, Infrastructure Solutions for a Changing Energy Landscape. If time allows at the end of the session, the panel will take questions submitted by the audience. To submit a question, please scan the QR code located on the screen. Please be sure to silence your cell phones. Enjoy the conversation, and please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator, Shafin Khan.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Materials Behind the Mission. I am Shafin Khan. So excited today to have Dr. Noshir Pesika and Mr. Philip Richard today to talk about materials behind the mission. One of the key things here is that as we think about efficiency of energy and new technologies, new materials and new technology is certainly key towards having that happen, right? And so there's a really unique need there to improve certainly our energy world, also improve our opportunities for energy diversification. And so when you think about things like composite materials, when you think about rare earth metals, when you think about construction of steel, right, there's opportunities to improve the efficiencies in all of these different opportunities. And so really excited to have these two wonderful gentlemen here to talk about this issue and kind of bring to light some of the innovations and opportunities around this issue. So I am Shafin Khan. I'm the VP of Innovation and Technology Commercialization over at the beach at UNO. We're the Research and Technology Park connected to the University of New Orleans, which has a host of great expertise, one of which is certainly in mechanical engineering that has great materials work. We also do work related to wind energy through the Wind Hub at UNO, looking at research, education, as well as workforce programs. And so I'll talk a little bit about that throughout our talk here today. But really excited to have our wonderful panelists. And so I was going to turn it over to them to do a quick intro. So Dr. Pesika, if you could go ahead.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Noshir Pesika. I'm a faculty in chemical and biomolecular engineering at Tulane. I've been in the teaching for 17 years, and my area of expertise is in surface science, tribology, which is looking at friction, adhesion phenomena, and in electrochemistry. And a lot of the work we do is sort of inspired by nature. And some of the projects we work on are related to the space industry. We look at medical devices. So yeah, that's good, my introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Pesika.
Yeah, Phil Richard. I'm a retired oil field professional. I currently am an adjunct at UNO. We just developed a course, Energy in the 21st Century, where we focused on renewable and non-renewable sources of energy. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Welcome to both of you. So, one of the things I want to first kind of level set with is, Dr. Pesika, you come from biotechnology, medical space. Philip, you come from the area of oil and gas. But both of these industries are looking at materials and technology to improve the efficiencies or whatnot. What do you see as being kind of the driving forces behind both of your areas of interest, or the industries that you work in terms of kind of bringing technology forward and having adoption of technology?
Go ahead.
So it really depends on the particular project. So for example, the research that I'm working on, we're looking at developing the next generation of armor technologies for space applications. So whereas on Earth, we have the atmosphere that protects us from micrometeoroids and space debris, we don't have that in space. And so we're developing these armor technologies that can self-heal when they are impacted by these debris. So in that particular case, reliability becomes a big issue. How often can you stop that impact? And then making materials that are extremely lightweight. We can't afford taking strong, tough, but heavy materials to space. And so we're kind of coming up with new designs for materials that are very lightweight. So that's the value proposition there. For the medical field, it's biocompatibility of your material, the durability of your material. Those are things that come into play. And in the energy area, of course, I do some work in the lubrication field, and their efficiency is the big thing. So making just, anytime you have moving parts in your technology, you have to worry about energy losses due to friction. And if we can minimize that energy loss, that's a big gain as far as reducing energy consumption.
What I've seen over my career in the oil patch, I started working the shelf before Shell started buying deepwater leases in the early 80s. And I've seen those deepwater leases come to fruition with very large development projects. I've seen peak oil come and go at least twice. King Hubbard developed this curve when we were going to see peak oil, yet horizontal drilling, hydraulic fracturing, has put us to where today we are the #1 producer in the United States of oil in the world. We do not lag Russia and Saudi Arabia, we lead them. What I'm looking for, we were talking about wind power just now. Wind power, you realize how many birds and bats are killed from turbine blades? Do we need the technology with some type of sound emission to keep them away? I mean, we already know not to build wind farms in migration pathways. Do the blades need to be a different color? Does it matter what height they are from the ground? We've got hydropower. They're developing wave technology that we can employ offshore to harness the power of waves as they come ashore and provide energy. And we've got solar panels. I understand there's changes going on right now in the materials that are going into solar panels that are going to make them more efficient. And battery technology, I can't go a day without reading about changes in battery technology. And this is a big area.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, Philip, in a second. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously you've been in oil and gas for some time now. What have you seen in terms of that specific industry, in terms of how technology has changed in oil and gas specifically? Looking at, you talked about efficiencies and some of those things. What have you seen on that front?
We used to have to stop operations and log a well. And nowadays, we don't have to do that. We've got measurement while drilling. We've got logging while drilling so that those operations can continue. We've got real-time data acquisition. What we've done with geosteering to be able to get from deviated wells, which where we had to slide the bit to get it going, to now we've got rotary steerables and we're drilling horizontal wells. We're drilling designer wells all over the place. And I understand now in Western Texas, they're even electrifying rigs, reducing carbon footprint there.
And that's certainly something that we, have been involved a little bit with. So really exciting to hear that that's been happening in Western Texas. So you talked a little about kind of the electrification. Are there other technologies you've seen when it comes to reducing carbon footprint or reducing kind of environmental impacts as it relates to oil and gas specifically that over your career?
To me, the big one, and I don't know if people would consider this reducing the carbon footprint, but the reason per capita CO2 emissions in the U.S. have gone down is we've switched to natural gas. It's unfortunate that identity politics has seized upon natural gas as a fossil fuel when it's the cleanest of the fossil fuels. And we've done very well to switch to natural gas. Can we switch to renewables? Sure, to the extent we can. I mean, I personally have solar panels on my house. I drive a hybrid car, but natural gas is where it's at in the interim. This is the fuel that Mother Nature has provided us to make the transition.
Excellent, thank you, Philip. So, Noshir, next question to you. I mean, you and I, we've worked together quite a bit, and now you have a really exciting background in materials science and engineering. And so, one of the ones I wanted to ask you about was a ongoing discussion about lithium in renewables and batteries in particular being a particular challenge in terms of mining and things like that. So, what is your take on that? And I mean, do you see any potential opportunities for ways to overcome any challenges if there are challenges?
Yeah, so personally, I'm totally for renewables. I think that should be our future. At the same time, when you do consider alternative technologies for energy, I think as scientists and engineers, we need to kind of be wary about the impacts that these new technologies can have. Many cases where we're working in a lab setting and we're making very small quantities of some novel material, and the environmental impact of making this new material is not apparent immediately. When you scale up the production of these new materials, I think we should be asking that question and making sure that we are considering the environment as we're making these new materials. So as an example, for the lithium-ion batteries, thinking about the extraction of the lithium, what processes are involved in that, in isolating and purifying the lithium, how much energy is associated with each of these steps, and what kind of detrimental effects is it having while we're producing those materials. So yeah, I think I guess as future technologies are being developed, we should always just be thinking, not just at the small scale, at the larger scale, thinking about the environment and how can we minimize the impact.
Absolutely. And then, Philip, I wanted to ask you about carbon capture, which is a big topic these days. In your time in the oil and gas industry, thinking about the application of carbon capture to your work, where do you see that going? Are there needs in terms of technology development to really make that be a viable piece? Certainly, we have a audience of researchers who are certainly involved in this space. So curious to get your take from the industry side.
Well, enhanced oil recovery greatly benefits from CO2. Once we get above the minimum miscibility pressure in the reservoir, we can affect greater recovery if we can just get CO2 there. In the early 80s, I was offered a job working with getting CO2 from the McElmo Dome, Four Corners area down to the Permian Basin. I turned it down, not seeing where the future was going. And now we have to figure out how we get it to our big oil fields. And offshore, our big oil fields are in deep water. Is anybody abandoning a pipeline that we might be able to turn around and use to reverse the flow, get CO2 down to those oil fields? And that's a great use for CO2 if we can just accomplish it.
What do you see as being some of the barriers to getting that going?
Well, you have oil companies spent millions of dollars laying pipelines in the deep water. Who's going to spend millions of dollars to get CO2 offshore? And the best way I know is to defer the abandonment of those lines, turn around and change the service to CO2 delivery rather than natural gas intake.
That's really interesting. Do you know of anyone who's kind of piloting that or trying that out?
No, I know that I was at the LSU Energy Conference, or I don't know what you call it, Energy Fundamental School, and we talked to the governor of North Dakota. And he was saying, we've been doing CO2 for a long time in their conventional oil recovery. And I asked him about how it was going in the unconventional oil recovery. He said, well, we're just getting started with that. So it has been around for a long time. It does work. It's just a matter of getting the supply to where the reservoirs are that can use the CO2.
Excellent. Thank you, Philip. I wanted to turn to Noshir now and talk a little bit about an area that I've really enjoyed working with you on, which is kind of the idea of kind of nature-based solutions and utilizing nature, which is a big area of your research. Understanding and modeling nature and how that goes into new technology and kind of our improving efficiencies and processes is such a really cool, interesting space. Really enjoyed working with you on those sort of things. So can you talk a bit about some examples that you may have come across in your career or are familiar with where different nature-based solutions have been applied in particular industries? And maybe let's start with not energy. Let's put energy aside. Let's just talk about other industries because I think the work you do is so interdisciplinary. Can you talk a little bit about some of the non-energy applications?
So this is the area of biomimicry. So the whole concept is rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, let's see where we can be inspired by nature, because nature encounters very similar problems that we're trying to solve. And nature has had millions of years to kind of evolve and come up with, in many cases, very efficient ways of overcoming issues and problems. And some of the sort of technologies that we come across every day that's been inspired by nature, if you think of the design of airplanes, the wing structure, the shape of the airplane, that's all inspired by looking at how birds fly and the shape of birds. How can we lower drag? Velcro, right? So something that we use every day was inspired by looking at the burr seeds. These are the seeds that kind of stick to your socks every time you're hiking. But this sort of hook and loop design was inspired by nature again. Some newer technologies that are coming out, they're looking at the desert beetle that naturally captures water from the air. So if we can understand the science behind how these beetles are doing it, we can replicate that same technology, and that can be a source of water. The other example is the mussels that are found in the ocean. They have a gooey, sticky material that can work underwater, right? So developing an adhesive that sticks underwater. If you think about when you're having a surgery and the surgeon needs to stick your tissue together, that could be a material that if we understand how the mussels in the oceans do it, maybe we can come up with a synthetic version that works under the same principles. So those are things that are already there. Personally, in my lab, we're working on making reversible adhesives that are inspired by gecko lizards. So the little lizards that can climb on the walls and walk on ceilings, and they can do this reversibly, on and off. They can stick and unstick, and it can be done multiple times. And so we're making materials that are inspired by how geckos do it. We're also looking at how the cartilage in your joints, how they manage to make surfaces slide very easily. So the cartilage in your joints are extremely slippery, and so if we can understand that, we can make materials that have minimal amount of frictional losses. We are currently developing an artificial knee meniscus, but that's again, we're trying to understand how nature does it, and then we try to reproduce it. And just to make sure, I'm not saying that we should replicate nature entirely, but be inspired by nature. So even if it's a technology that cannot be applied in a particular environment, we can, as engineers, we can adapt what nature is doing to that particular environment. And one scenario is we're developing the armor for space applications. In space, you're in a vacuum environment, so you can't use liquids. But we're inspired by looking at how your own body heals. So you get a cut, your blood goes to the cut and forms a little clot and prevents further bleeding. And so our armor technology is kind of inspired by that, where it's a self-healing armor. So if there is a micrometeoroid that hits the armor and penetrates through it, we have a method of clotting that crack in a way. So yeah, those are sort of examples of ongoing research in the lab.
I mean, it's so fascinating. I could listen to this all day. I mean, I was listing the industries that you just talked about. I mean, you had defense, aerospace, textiles, biotechnology, medical devices, adhesives, which are similar. The water industry. I mean, there are so many of these that this applies to, which is really really exciting to see. So I'm curious, and I'll come to you, Philip, as well. But Noshir, for you first. I mean, thinking about the audience that we have here and the opportunities around future energy, ways to increase efficiency. How did some of the things that you just talked about, how do they apply in the energy industry?
Yeah, so I don't have all the answers, but I think so just thinking about energy, how does nature capture energy and store it? Right? So if we go to plants, they use photosynthesis, so they have the capability of converting light energy and making sugars out of it that they use. So as a scientist or engineer, I would kind of, if this was a problem I'm trying to solve, I'll ask, how is nature solving this? And trying to understand what chemicals are used in the leaves to convert the light into chemical energy. Can we design molecules that work under the same principles? And essentially make leaf mimics as solar panels, as opposed to the inorganic materials we're using right now. Maybe we can move to more organic materials that work as solar panels. And maybe we don't need to capture the energy and store it in the form of a chemical, but maybe we can immediately use that energy as electricity. In the technology of wind turbines, thinking about, can we make the wind turbines more efficient by enhancing lubrication? So finding if we can use a similar principle that we use in our cartilage that's very slippery, can we apply that same technology to make turbines more efficient? Thinking about the turbine blades, can we get inspiration from nature for animals or plants that have a very similar way of operating? Maybe we need to reduce the drag on the blades. So can we find an animal that? And the one animal that comes to mind is the fins of whales. They have these structures that lower drag on them. So maybe that same technology can be applied to the wind turbine blades. So yeah, those are sort of other examples. Could be things like more universal, so in this particular building, we're trying to cool down the building in the summer and heat it up during the winter times. Can we come up with better insulating materials? And that can be inspired by looking at the fur of animals. Right? So these animals have had millions of years to adapt and to come up with very efficient ways of making insulating materials. Can we be inspired by that to make our own version of insulation? And then finally, just creating lightweight materials in general, things that are very light, but at the same time very strong. And the first thing that comes to mind is the bones of birds. They are very porous because they need to be lightweight, but at the same time they're extremely strong relative to their weight. So can we look at the design of those bones and make our own artificial version of bone that can be used for future lightweight materials?
That's so fascinating. I mean, I think, on that last point, right, I mean, one of the things that we're looking at the University of New Orleans with our engineering department is, how do we build wind turbines that can withstand Category 5 hurricanes and the storms that we have in the Gulf? And so that piece is exactly right. Like, how do we build in flexibility to the blades? How do we build in, the ability to capture the wind, but also be light enough. And so there's a lot of really exciting research on that piece. And I think there may be some collaborations we need to talk about on that front. So Philip, I'm curious, oil and gas industry beyond, what are your thoughts on kind of some nature-based solutions that you've seen applied?
Well, I can't talk to nature-based solutions. I get excited about battery technology. Right now, we're real dependent on China for lithium, but sodium ion battery technology is coming along, and we can't use the same anodes or cathodes, maybe same electrolyte, same separator, but sodium we've got here in the U.S. So I'm really excited if we can make some breakthroughs there to facilitate more energy storage. I'm looking at adding batteries to my solar system at my house, But I know as soon as I put it in, it's going to be obsolete in terms of waiting a year. I'd probably get something better, more efficient.
Yeah, the speed of technology change, right? Okay, so we are slowly coming up towards the end. So there is a QR code up there, I believe. So please do submit any questions that you have for the panel. We can kind of dive in there as well. Would love to hear some thoughts from the individuals in the crowd. So I mean, kind of coming back to Philip, you mentioned lithium-ion batteries and some of the opportunities around renewables. Thinking about some of the value propositions around oil and gas, some of the opportunities for technology improvements that you've seen over the years for oil and gas, what renewable sources, like renewable opportunities, whether it's wave, wind, whatever, really kind of excite you in terms of opportunities in the future? Obviously, these are younger industries than the oil and gas industry, but as they grow, as researchers like Dr. Pesika come up with nature-based solutions to help them improve efficiencies, where do you see these
well, if you look in
catching
terms
on?
of life cycle CO2 emissions, solar and wind are the way to go. They are by far the smallest lifetime, and I mean cradle to grave, CO2 emissions. And this is where we can really do a lot of good with our efforts. Oil and gas has a lot of other uses besides combustible fuel. Just think about how many products in your house you have every day that you may not even realize come from oil and gas. From the milk cartons you use, from the plastic sheeting that protects your paper in the morning, if you're old-fashioned and still get the paper delivered. We got plenty that we can use oil and gas for besides combustibles. One of the things I find interesting is this use of wave technology. You ever gone to the beach and stood out in the surf and felt that cyclic pounding against your body? We can take advantage of that to store energy and use energy.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any questions from the audience? Do you have any questions from the audience? Not yet. Okay. So I mean, I guess I'm curious. Thinking about wave energy, thinking about some of these renewable opportunities. Is there one in particular that stands out that you've seen some of your industry partners, some of the people that you're working with in particular are really kind of investing in moving forward?
Well, I found the previous panel discussion very interesting because he talked about transferring a lot of the skills from the oil and patch over to geothermal. That sounds like a good opportunity for us. Can we get deep enough? Can we get hot enough? And that would be a nice transition. Now, he's talking about doing it up in North Louisiana. What are the opportunities down in South Louisiana, even offshore?
So you're thinking geothermal is the bigger opportunity for the region?
Well, that sounds like a really good opportunity. As I recall, it was very low on life cycle emissions as well. And this is not only the production of energy, but the extraction of energy, all the way to the abandonment of the facilities involved. And you have to think in terms of the whole life cycle when you're talking about CO2 emissions.
Absolutely. Noshir, I mean, thinking a little bit more about the work that you're doing on the meniscus, the knee work. Have you had any discussions with industry partners about how that could translate into energy applications? Obviously, the idea of motion to generate energy is kind of ubiquitous across different types, not just wind turbines, but others. Have you had any discussions? And if so, what do they look like, or what could this look like in terms of collaboration around helping to create more efficiency around reducing friction?
Yeah, so the cartilage material itself, the mechanism by which your body lowers the friction, or the cartilage material lowers friction, is different from the traditional way of lowering friction. So in machinery, you're using an oily material. So you think of your car engine, you have the piston rubbing in the engine, and there you're using engine oil to reduce that the friction forces. In your body, you're not relying on the lubricant as much as the cartilage material itself. So the solid material itself, although it's solid, it's compliant and it's flexible. And the way it works is when you apply a force on that surface, it sort of oozes out a liquid, and that liquid is what helps you lubricate. The properties of the liquid are not as critical. It's that oozing out action. So you can think of the cartilage as a sponge that oozes out the liquid and then provides the lubrication. So thinking about using that same mechanism of lubrication in other technologies, it would just require rethinking about how do we design the moving parts. Are we okay moving away from metals and oil for lubrication to moving to something that's softer and using a benign liquid like water that serves as a lubricating system. And there are other sort of friction reduction mechanisms where we're also working on, is there a compromise where rather than using metals for manufacturing components for gears and such, can we use polymer composites that are lightweight, but we can add additives in the polymer that lower friction. So polymers on their own, they would not be great as a shearing surface. They're just weak. They wear off very quickly, and the friction can generally be very high. But we can add little carbon microspheres. So these are really tiny particles that are about 100 times smaller than the width of your hair. They can act as ball bearings to reduce friction in that way. Or we can just have the polymer and these ball bearings together as a composite material, and that's also been shown to lower friction. So thinking about electric cars where you don't have to worry about combustion and high temperatures, there you can start moving towards using plastic materials that have potentially low melting points, but they can be used as a lightweight material for future car technology. So yeah,
Cool.
that's where I see it.
So, I mean, I'm going to put Philip on the spot a little bit here. Let's build a real-time industry academic collaboration here. Well, what is your take on kind of what you're hearing from Dr. Pesika about some of the opportunities around, this friction thing is certainly something you've dealt with in your career.
One of the things I heard you talking about was nanotechnology. And, the more we find out about that, the more application it probably has worldwide. I'm sure in drilling and fracturing technologies, I'm sure there's probably already some nanotechnology being applied. I just can't speak to it specifically. But the more research we do, the more papers we write, and the more times we fail. And we resolve to learn from the failures. That's what will allow us to progress with technology.
Absolutely. I believe we have a question.
What advancements or innovations could be made with recycling existing batteries, petroleum products?
I was reading this morning where they're talking about, I believe it's car batteries from EVs, using that as energy storage for power plants. That's something I hadn't thought of before, but if you stop and consider one of the problems we have with nuclear fuel, nuclear power generation, is we have no facility for spent fuel reprocessing or disposal in this country. You know, maybe we should deal with that. What can we do with the spent fuel? It's the uranium's not gone. We're just replacing, I think it's 1/3 of the fuel rods every 1 to 2 years, whether they're worn out or not. You know, what's the use beyond that? And I'm sure that there is one.
Noshir, you have thoughts on recycling?
I definitely agree with recycling, but this is not really my area as far as the research that I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
There was a part 2 to it, and is there reuse, availability, innovation opportunities, or is just too costly? Is it too costly?
You know, Jefferson Parish, we did curbside recycling. That stopped because it was cost ineffective. So now we're doing voluntary recycling. If you're so inclined, you bring it to the David Drive or this place on the West Bank in Jefferson Parish, and you can get rid of it that way. You know, the problem is that once everybody starts recycling, then there comes a flood of material and the price goes down. And then the incentive to recycle goes away. And it's this boom-bust cycle they've talked about before today. That's...
So Philip, I'm curious, related to recycling and kind of oil and gas industry, have you seen that happening or improving over kind of your career of how the recycling, different parts of the supply chain?
Well, I know particularly when it comes to fracturing, water use is a big problem. I guess there was a pollution concern. So a lot of companies have figured out a way to recycle their fractionating water. And that's one area where recycling has actually benefited the oil patch.
Great. All right, excellent. Any other questions come in? Okay. All right, so I think, kind of wrapping up here.
Shafin, I'll just add, as far as the cost associated with recycling, I feel like as a society, we can subsidize that ourselves. So what I mean is, are we okay paying the extra amount ourselves to protect the environment, right? So thinking about, a good example is we have an undergraduate or a graduate from our chemical engineering program who found that we did not recycle glass in New Orleans. And she opened up a company, a nonprofit glass recycling company, Half Glass Full. We're very proud of what she's achieved. But this is just an example that maybe the process itself is maybe not cost effective and it's not going to make money. But if we as the society were willing to, okay, I'll give you $10, $5, $10 to come pick up my glass, and if that subsidizes the recycling, maybe that's okay. So yeah, cost-wise, I feel like as a society, if we are okay contributing to the recycling, then it should not be an issue.
Yeah, I believe Glass Half Full is the one doing the recycling in Jefferson.
Yep.
And I think if you surveyed the residents, you'd find that they're more willing to pay for recycling, a small fee for enabling pickup in your area neighborhoods. Best Buy, everybody brings their electronics to Best Buy. they're recycling the materials, is it advantageous? Does it make a profit for them? Or is it simply helping the environment? I don't know. The more information we have, the better decisions we can make.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we're looking at kind of wrapping up here, for our audience, I'd love to have each of you give some final thoughts or some big takeaways that you'd like to leave them with as they head to their reception. I know we stand between them and the reception, but Philip, maybe I'll start with you. What is kind of your takeaway, final thoughts you'd like to leave?
I think the technologists, we just need to keep on pushing, keep on asking the questions. There's a limit on the power that we can generate from wind turbines. Betts' law. But does that mean that there's not some inefficiencies that we can eliminate in the meantime? One thought that had come to me is if you look at the price of natural gas and you divided the cost per kilowatt hour of natural gas, and you look at the heat rate coming off a natural gas generator, there's a huge disconnect there. Natural gas is very, very cheap, but when you have to go through the combustion process and the inefficiencies, all of a sudden that cost doubles, triples, quadruples. We just need to keep technology proven. Some incentives to do research and development are important. Individual companies doing research and development. The international research and development. Our stealth technology came from Russia, of all people. There's a lot of good ideas. China, I berate China for being such a big polluter, but a lot of great ideas on renewables are coming out of China right now. So collaboration and just keep pushing. And we've got to get over this hump of considering failure is wrong. No, failure is an opportunity to learn. And we've got to get past that psychological hump. In the oil patch, nobody wanted to be responsible for drilling a dry hole. That's just the way it was. And we've got to get over that stigma. We've got to realize Gemini project, if you recall, the early spacewalks on the Gemini project all failed. The shields were fogging up. They couldn't see what they were doing. And it took Buzz Aldrin, took all this information in and designed some modifications on the Gemini capsules and was able to successfully navigate in space because he learned from the failures. And I can't emphasize that enough. Failure is not a bad outcome. It's a less profitable outcome. It's a less prestigious outcome, but it can be an educational opportunity.
Yeah, reframing it to learning and including those learnings in the next iteration and using that to get better is certainly key. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. Dr. Pesika, please.
So as far as those learnings, and I'm biased, of course, because that's my research area. But I would say whenever you are encountered with a problem, maybe as a start, just ask what would nature do, and that can be sort of an inspiration for coming up with a solution. And maybe it's not as efficient, maybe it's not the best solution. But of course, when you fail, you learn, and then as engineers and scientists, we can adapt. That nature can just be the starting point, and then you build on it and come up with even more efficient solutions. So yeah, that would be my recommendation or takeaway message. What would nature do?
I don't want to start a debate here, but let's call it intelligent design.
All right, excellent. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion. Really, thank you so much. Can we give our panelists a round of applause, please?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for this session. Our next session in this space will be on tomorrow. See you then.
Hey everyone, this is Tucker Whitmer, current president of Tulane's Energy Club here. We are having a networking hour in the LBC in the Stibbs room. So if y'all could be joining us, that would be great. Thank you.